Elizabeth Raw is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Elizabeth, welcome to the programme. Thanks so much for your time. I mean, clearly all of this diplomacy is also addressing extremely important strategic issues. This idea of 40,000 extra NATO troops in 4 Eastern European allied nations, is it anything more than symbolic? Because a lot of people are wondering whether 40,000 troops would even be a deterrent to Vladimir Putin, whatever his intent may be beyond Ukraine.
Good evening. 40,000 troops is clearly not 190,000, which is what Russia lined up at Ukraine's border prior to invading it, but it's a lot more than NATO put in the Baltic states and Poland after Russia's annexation of Crimea and the war in the now self-declared republics in the east, which is 4,000 soldiers total in those 4 battle groups. Now we're talking about 40,000. That's a whole lot more. And the challenge, though, for NATO is that it can't be seen as provoking Russia. It should be seen as supporting Ukraine. But the moment it takes what Russia might perceive as provocative measures, Russia might then decide to retaliate against NATO directly. And that is the really difficult balancing act NATO faces.
Joe Biden held a news conference about an hour and a half or so ago. He was asked a question about whether there would be a military response from NATO if Russia were to use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine. He said, yes, there will be a response, but he wouldn't go into any details. Isn't the truth that he wouldn't want to commit himself to any possible red lines, which in fact Barack Obama did, didn't he, when talking about chemical weapons use in Syria, and then they were used and the Obama administration didn't do anything?
This is the really challenging part of deterrence. So you want the other side to get the message that if it does something, you will respond massively, so they better not do it. And if you draw red lines, which is what Obama did in Syria, and has said, if you use chemical or biological weapons, we will respond. If you commit yourself to such specific issues, then if you don't follow up, you look like a fool, which is what happened to Obama. So Biden, who is a foreign policy expert, unlike Obama, is wise not to commit himself to a specific action in a specific circumstance, but to say if there is a major expansion of this war, we will retaliate. Of course, the Ukrainians would say that's not enough. We want specific commitments from NATO. But again, that brings us back to that really difficult balancing act that NATO has to strike.
Considering the collective response from the West, the EU and NATO, what do you think the geostrategic fallout here is going to be? Because it does seem as if, while Vladimir Putin wanted to reshape the European security structure, he's done so, but possibly not in any way that he thought was going to happen.
That is the paradox, is it not? He wanted to shake up the situation, to divide NATO, to divide NATO in order to strengthen Russia, and of course to gain quite a bit of territory in the process, Ukrainian territory. He has achieved the opposite. Russia's invasion isn't going well. The Ukrainians are defending themselves well, and NATO is more united than ever. So it seems to me he had terrible advice. His intelligence service should have known that the Ukrainians were much better prepared militarily and that they were determined to resist. And as for NATO, I think it comes as a surprise to maybe NATO member states themselves that they had it in them to unite in this fashion. But that's what you do when there is an existential threat, which a land war in Europe is.
Elizabeth, thank you so much indeed. Really appreciate the analysis. Elizabeth Raw here in London.